Mic was not on all the time. Okay. I don't know if you could not hear me for the past, whatever, quite a bit that I've been talking, but I hope you could hear me. Anyway, so if you, if you didn't hear anything and my microphone was on mute all this time, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Verma Henry. This is Design Streaming Sessions. And yeah, if the mic was off, I'm terribly sorry. I've been talking probably for about 10 minutes now, talking about, design thinking. But the cool part is that all of the things that we've covered so far, is basically what is design thinking, which is, not necessarily part of the main topic of the day today, but is, it's sort of like a topic that we took a deep dive in one of our streams last week. So you can check out that in the description below. So oopsie if you're just joining or you are watching this and the mic was off. If it was on, let me continue. If it was off, check out the video around what is design thinking and how do you navigate. It's like a deep dive. So we are talking about using design thinking to solve problems. So I just wanted to start with what is design thinking and how does it work, and etc., etc. So what I was saying there is that design thinking is definitely a perfect process, but even without design thinking, they wouldn't have things like design sprints. But it's definitely not a step-by-step recipe that you can follow. It's more of a methodology that has got different methods that are used within each of the steps that you get it, whether it's empathize, define, ideate, the prototype and the test. Some of them, like the prototype and the test, they're pretty straightforward in these basic standard measures to do that. But it's not a step-by-step thing. It's not like a timed thing that you can actually follow and say, okay, we can do a design thinking process for you within a week or whatever it is, or a month. It sort of like goes. Maybe it's also the beauty of it, because it's more of a framework that you can apply on different things, and it it can sort of like morph into all of these different things. So check out the link in the description. I think I just said design thinking, or what is design thinking. I think that was the name of the video that we did last week, on our live design streaming sessions. Welcome. Cool. So I wanted to dive into design thinking methods, but I don't think I have to dive into that. Check out the video as well. So what problems can you solve with design thinking? Maybe that is one of the bigger questions around if you're going to be doing any problem solving with design thinking. What are some of the things that you can solve with design thinking, right? So like I said, design thinking is used by some of the big tech companies in the world, but also so when I say tech companies, I mean things like Google, people like IBM, Airbnb, and Apple. But there's also non-tech companies in the world that use design thinking as a way to solve their problems and as a way to really help them navigate certain problems and solve them creatively with design. And when I say design, I don't necessarily mean the visual aspects of graphic design and other things like that per se. I mean, sort of like the creative way of approaching problem solving in this context using design thinking. So what are some of those scenarios? There are non-tech companies as well that use design thinking processes, like retail companies, things like Walmart and other people want to optimize sort of like their shop experiences and things like that. So when you want to come up with new ideas for new products, to solve a problem that you are having within a society, community, or something that is just missing within a workflow and a process, or whatever it might be that you want to solve for, where there is a problem, that is the perfect scenario of using design thinking to invent or innovate for that specific scenario, using sort of like this step-by-step process where you immerse yourself in the problem itself, and go through, defining, ideating, and prototyping and testing it, and sort of like iterating on that to be able to improve on the idea, and using real humans and real customer feedback, you'll be able to sort of like iterate on it pretty quickly, actually. That is one of the beauties of design thinking. So coming up with brand new ideas, for new products, to solve, general problems that you might be having, or to sort of like, solve for new product features. So let's say you have an existing product, and sort of like there is something that is missing in there, or there is something that is not working quite right per se. So you can use design thinking to sort of like gather some of that feedback, when you're doing your prototyping and testing, and bring it back into, sort of like you're defining and ideation, to sort of like solve, so let's say you've got an app that you feel that there is something that is missing, that is actually not solving one of your customers' problems that they're having. You can use this process to whether, include new features altogether, or improve on features that are already there. So improving the product that is already there, or coming up with new features for the product that is already there, or improving the features in the products that have already been there. So different scenarios of applying it there, for new ideas and existing ones as well. And this is not just for, creating solutions for digital problems per se. Like I said, it's not for digital products also, right? It's not just for things like apps and websites and SaaS products, B2B type of products, or whatever it might be, right? You can use design thinking to come up with a solution for a number of different things, whether it's a process within your shopping experience and your environment, whether it's sort of like the actual experience at a certain place to solve for things like accessibility for people with disabilities, etc. Or it could be just how to optimize and make a certain process of your workflow more efficient, or something like that, or how you work as a team, or how a business runs, right? So it can be applied to different processes and different things, for you to be able to navigate different problem solving environments and things like that. So those are some of the problems that you can solve with design thinking, and be able to navigate your way around. All right, so little interruption there. We are back. We had an intruder in the room. The beauty and pleasures about working at home, etc. Cool. So, you know, what are some of the things? So you're thinking, okay, cool, this is some of the places that you can apply design thinking as a process and as a way of doing things. These are some of things that you can do and think about, yeah, if you probably missed the first 10-15 minutes of the video, I'm sorry about that, because of not having audio. So let's jump into sort of like talking around why designers need to learn and apply design thinking as a skill. Why is it a good thing to have this in your toolkit? So number one, I think it's always a good thing to have a new skill. If you're a UX designer or somebody who's getting into UX design, it's always a good skill set to be able to help your customers by solving certain things and problems, by having, like, UX designers are hired to solve problems for companies and people, and the actual customer that is within question here. So think about think about it, like it's just an extra skill that you are having. But it's not just any other extra skill. I think this is actually one of the most overlooked skill in sort of like the UX UI world. One of the most underrated skill that you can add into your, UX bag of tricks, because it enables you to actually solve problems. A lot of people know about design thinking and how it works and all of that, but very few UX designers, especially within the UX UI designer context, very few of those designers are actually applying things like design thinking, design sprints, etc., to be able to solve problems that their customers are currently having with that their clients are currently having with their customers. I always find it hard to, navigate the customer and client thing. But anyway, I hope that sounds better. It sounds better to me as well. I felt like the mic was a little bit off, or maybe should I flip it around? I usually have it the other way around, and I just got it stuck like this today because I started the streaming session with it up like this. But I hope you can see me. It's not like distracting my face or anything. So cool. Other than, this being, one extra thing that you can add onto your toolkit, onto your skill set that you have as a UX designer, it is a very crucial thing. One of the most overlooked things, I think, one of the underused and underutilized methods in creating solutions for clients and our everyday today sort of like problem solving. This is one of the most overlooked processes that I see out there that UX designers and their clients don't actually learn and adopt and just consider actually doing, especially if you're working within agile environments and other places like that. This is usually part of discovery, and it's done in a very short space of time, etc. But I'm not going to get into that. I want to talk a little bit more about why designers need to learn this skill and actually apply it. This is an evergreen skill, right? Like I said, design thinking has been there for many of years, since like the 1980s, etc. So it's definitely an evergreen skill, not only because it has sort of like withstood the test of time, but purely from the fact that you can the different parts of the process are basically buckets that you can fill up with different processes and methodologies that apply in your certain scenario. So you're actually learning a very core framework for you to be able to solve problems with a team of people that are trying to come up with a solution for a specific need that they have as a business or as an organization or as a community or whatever it is. So you can actually apply this in many different ways, not only in your work, but also in some other places of your life as well. Maybe if you do things like voluntary work for a certain organization and other places like that. So think about that, how much of value that you can actually having an evergreen problem solving skill that you can apply for years and years and years to come, and you can always tweak how you actually apply the process. The process will always be the same, immersing yourself in the user, in the user's needs, defining it, ideating, prototyping, and testing, and sort of like going into the iteration loop. There are sort of like better ways that apply design thinking, like the design sprint method, that's actually time boxed, and it's a step-by-step recipe more than it is sort of like a methodology or framework that you can loosely apply. Those things can quickly sort of like change over time, and how they can be applied and affected by things like remote working and other sort of like environments that you can apply them, right? So this is almost like a more holistic framework that you can apply and tweak and adjust over the years, and keep it evergreen and keep using it. So once you learn it, it's sort of like forever serving you. It's a gift that keeps on giving, literally. So the next point is UX designers are hired to solve problems, right? And I think if you're a UX designer and you're just pushing pixels within your current UX UI role, we usually find that scenario, and this is why we exist as Do Better UX. We want to talk about the real scenarios that actually happen with UX designers out there. A lot of people find themselves as UX designers or UX UI designers, especially within that UX UI designer role. There's a lot of gray area. You find yourself pushing pixels 90% of the time, and the other 10% sort of like having conversations or trying to understand what the business proposition and what the solution is, and actually not solving any problems, right? When companies hire UX designers, the ones that actually know what UX designers are supposed to do and give them the leeway to do what they hired them for, they're expecting you to actually solve problems for them, to apply things like the design thinking process, to be able to solve some of their customers' needs, to apply things like the design sprint process to help them get to better ideas that are validated quicker, right? So those are the things that will really accelerate your UX career forward and really make you stand out from the rest of the ordinary good designers that are already there, because right now they are a lot of good designers that are good at releasing really good design interfaces, like screens and stuff like that, and that are really good at doing things like UX research, etc. But like I said, this is one of the most overlooked skills that is not being learned and applied both by UX designers and applied within the field itself of problem solving and general UXing in companies. So don't just learn about these things, look for the opportunities for you to actually be able to apply them and sort of like not evangelize them, but like bring them forward and actually use them to solve real problems within your businesses and whatever environments that you might be working in as a UX designer, or that you might be getting into, if you're considering to be a UX designer. And if you are considering to be a UX designer, these are one of the skills that will, sort of like kickstart and jumpstart your career, that will set you apart from some of the other people that, are in this field, that will really show your, potential employees, or the people that you want to work with, that you want to hire you as a UX designer, that you actually know what you're doing and you're able to help them solve the problems that they have at hand, and not just move pixels around for them. So those are some of the reasons that I have of why you should be looking into this as a UX designer, and learning design thinking as a UX designer, or as a UX UI designer. I'm not really precious about what your title is, or as a product designer, like there's many titles within this sort of like UX design space that we sort of like overlap. They are actually different titles. If you're interested about knowing what the different titles are and sort of like what they mean, please just type yes in the comment section below, and I will drop in some descriptions for you. So The next point is there are many methods that you can apply to fit sort of like your style of working and some of the existing skills that you have. So let's say you have been, playing in the UX design role that, that has got a lot of user research, and maybe you do a little bit of wireframing and prototyping, etc., etc. You can take most of those skills that you currently already have, and find an easier path for you to apply, sort of like the design thinking process, and, look for different sort of like methodologies and methods, between the empathize, sort of like between the different steps of, the design thinking process, to help you navigate, the space of learning, and the learning curve much faster, by applying the skills that you already have, and, sort of like the style of working that you have within your team. So that is the beauty about working with a framework and not necessarily a step-by-step process. So I'm sort of like going through the different pros and cons of, having a framework versus having, sort of like a step-by-step process, as I'm going through here. So it's really up to you to, pick out what works for you, when best it works for you. You might decide to learn both of the different things, and decide when you want to apply them with different contexts and different client problems and different scenarios, etc., etc. Again, this is one of the most overlooked skill in the UX UI design world that is not represented well enough, and that I believe that can drive a lot of customer value, and help you solve everyday day-to-day business problems, and that can be applied on a very quick scale that you can do within a week, or you can sort of like stretch it out and do a deep dive and extensive research to empathize, and do sort of like designing and prototyping over maybe a month or so, like 4 weeks, etc. So that is using design thinking as a UX designer to problem solve. I know I didn't get into the process itself of how it actually works and what the steps are, but I didn't want to cover that, in this specific live streaming session. I wanted to really talk about, what are the other angles that you might want to think about, especially, what are the scenarios that you can use design thinking to solve the actual problems, and, coming up with new ideas, coming up with new, features and things like that. And also, especially what are some of the things that you need to consider why you should be learning design thinking to help problem solving, because UX designers are problem solvers, and that is what we are hired by our clients to do. We are hired to solve problems for the specific customer need that our clients have. So that is some of the reasons why you should be learning design thinking as a process, as a methodology, as a sort of like holistic framework that you can apply on different projects as you go, right? Cool. So if you're interested in learning more about UX design thinking, product design, and other things like that, we created Do Better UX definitely for that specific feature of your life. We understand sort of like navigating the internet is really difficult, and there's tons of information out there. We try and filter it out and bring you sort of like the non-filtered, no BS version of it, just the things that you actually need to know, and some of the things that you need to consider if they're important or not. Myself, I have been a UX designer for about 10 years now, and I have sort of like worked in many different sort of like markets and scenarios, so from telcos to medical environments to educational environments, etc. So I sort of like have an understanding of how it feels and how it works, and how it has evolved, especially within the South African context. So I think there is a need for people to be able to learn what they need to learn as quick as possible. So basically, downloading most of the, things that you should avoid. I think there are a lot of, things like boot camps and, other things out there that are not really explicit around the things that you need to know when you are getting into UX design or trying to take your UX design career to the next level. Maybe you want to get into the product design space or product owner space or whatever, that space is. If you're interested in some of those topics, please do let us know in the comments section below, or in the chat. I don't see anyone joining us at the moment, so please let us know in the comment section if you're watching the replay of this sometime in the future. And if you're interested in this type of content, please join us here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll be doing different live design streaming sessions. When you come on a Monday, you should be able to see, the 3 different topics that we have for that specific week. So currently you can see what we are doing on Wednesday and Friday, sort of like the topics that we're going to be covering. We are super excited about the Friday topic, where we'll be actually talking about getting into UX design, etc., etc. So if you're somebody who's new, who's getting into UX design, that is something, really cool for you to check out. Want to take a really deep dive around why you should be getting into UX design, in 2020 and beyond, and what are some of the things that you need to consider to, really kickstart your UX design career, so that you don't start with, the nonsense basics that everybody, teaches in their generic, courses and other things that are out there on the internet. Cool. So thank you for joining us for today's live designing streaming sessions. And again, if you like this session, please, do consider checking out some of the other content that we have as well. We have a podcast called Not a UX Designer that we try and, take out an episode every week. And we are trying to be a little bit more consistent with our content. We think we have, sort of like built the right team around it, and we, giving it a shot and sort of like seeing how it's going to go over the next, 2 quarters, the last quarter of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021. So we are going to be trying to be a little bit more consistent with our content from here on. So check out our podcast. We also got a blog over at dobetterux.com. Actually, if you just go at dobetterux.com, you'll be able to find all of those other cool things that we are talking about, and also have the opportunity to sign up for a newsletter and join our UX design community that we have over on LinkedIn, where we sort of like share different things, and you also have the opportunity to engage with other, sort of like industry leaders, people who are also learning UX design, we find a lot of value when other people ask questions that you might have not necessarily thought about, but that might be incredibly valuable to you. And when other people in the community answer those questions, or we answer those questions here over Do Better UX, you'll be able to find value in that as well. So it's really valuable. It's a really valuable community to join. When we are throwing out some of these questions and information around that is not necessarily accessible to the public. This is a private community that we're building, and hope to see you there. So that is me. That is Monday's live design streaming session. I'm your host, Farid Mahendry. Check you out on Wednesday. I'm out. Peace.